We truly do have, frankly, a corrupt Supreme Court. Today, oral arguments were heard regarding Trump's claim of complete immunity. And I swear, the questions from these conservative judges, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, even Justice John Roberts, you're shaking your head going, are y'all serious? Are you literally serious? This idiot Clarence Thomas came out of the gate. First of all, why is he even hearing the case considering he's married to somebody who's an insurrectionist? Y'all, Lord have mercy. Okay, all right. Check this out, okay? We're going to first play you a soundbite. This is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of the sane folks.
That's more worried about. You seem to be worried about the president being chilled. I think that we would have a really significant opposite problem if the president wasn't chilled. If someone with those kinds of powers, the most powerful person in the world, with the greatest amount of authority, could go into office knowing that there would be no potential penalty for committing crimes. I'm trying to understand what the disincentive is from turning the Oval Office into, the seat of criminal activity in this country.
I don't think there's any allegation of that in this case. And what George Washington said is, what Benjamin Franklin said is, we view the prosecution of a chief executive as something that everybody cried out against as unconstitutional. And what George Washington said is, we're worried about factional strife, which will.
No, I'm also. Let me put this worry on the table. If the potential for criminal liability is taken off the table, wouldn't there be a significant risk that future presidents would be emboldened to commit crimes with abandon while they're in office? It's right now the fact that we're having this debate because OLC has said that presidents might be prosecuted. Presidents from the beginning of time have understood that that's a possibility. That might be what has kept this office from turning into the kind of crime center that I'm envisioning. But once we say no criminal liability, Mr. President, you can do whatever you want, I'm worried that we would have a worse problem than the problem of the president feeling constrained to follow the law while he's in office.
I respectfully disagree with that because the regime you've described is the regime we've operated under for 234 years. There has.
All right, folks, here is Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Malum in se is a concept long viewed as appropriate in law, that there's some things that are so fundamentally evil that they have to be protected against. Now, I think, and your answer below, I'm going to give you a chance to say if you stay by it. If the president decides that his rival is a corrupt person and he orders the military or orders someone to assassinate him, is that within his official acts that for which he can get immunity?
It would depend on the hypothetical, but we can see that could well be an official act.
It could, and why? Because he's doing it for personal reasons. He's not doing it like President Obama is alleged to have done it, to protect the country from a terrorist. He's doing it for personal gain. And isn't that the nature of the allegations here? That he's not doing these acts in furtherance of an official responsibility. He's doing it for personal gain.
I agree with that characterization of the indictment, and that confirms immunity, because the characterization is that there's a series of official acts that were done for an unlawful.
No, because immunity says even if you did it for personal gain, we won't hold you responsible. How could that be?
Now you go from that brilliance to this, let's just say crap, from Justice Sam Alito.
I'm sure you would agree with me that a stable democratic society requires that a candidate who loses an election, even a close one, even a hotly contested one, leave office peacefully if that candidate is the incumbent?
Of course.
All right. Now, if an incumbent who loses a very close, hotly contested election knows that a real possibility after leaving office is not that the president is going to be able to go off into a peaceful retirement, but that the president may be criminally prosecuted by a bitter political opponent, will that not lead us into a cycle that destabilizes the functioning of our country as a democracy? And we can look around the world and find countries where we have seen this process, where the loser gets thrown in jail.
So I think it's exactly the opposite, Justice Alito. There are lawful mechanisms to contest the results in an election. And outside the record, but I think of public knowledge, petitioner and his allies filed dozens of electoral challenges, and my understanding is lost all but one that was not outcome determinative in any respect. There were judges that said in order to sustain substantial claims of fraud that would overturn an election result that's certified by a state, you need evidence, you need proof. And none of those things were manifested. So there is an appropriate way to challenge things through the courts with evidence. If you lose, you accept the results. That has been the nation's experience. I think the court is well familiar with that.
Mr. Sauer and others have identified events in the past, conduct that might have been charged as a federal crime, and you say, well, no, that's not really true. This is page 42 of your brief. So what about President Franklin D. Roosevelt's decision to intern Japanese Americans during World War II? Couldn't that have been charged under 18 U.S.C. 241, conspiracy against civil rights?
Today, yes, given this court's decision in Trump versus United States, in which Trump versus Hawaii, where the court said Korematsu is overruled. I mean, President Roosevelt made that decision with the advice of his attorney general. That's a layer of safeguard.
Is that really true? I thought Attorney General Biddle thought that there was really no threat of sabotage, as did J. Edgar Hoover.
So I think that there is a lot of historical controversy, but it underscores that occurred during wartime. It implicates potential commander-in-chief concerns about the exigencies of national defense that might provide an as-applied Article II challenge at the time. I'm not suggesting today, but the idea that a decision that was made and ultimately endorsed by this court, perhaps wrongly, in the Korematsu case, would support criminal prosecution under 241, which requires under United States versus Lanier that the right have been made specific so that there is notice to the president. I don't think that would have been satisfied.
All right.
Lauren, is it me or the conservative justices nuts?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what we're listening to is an argument about whether or not Donald Trump can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, to whomever he wants, right? That's what Sam Alito wants to check for everybody. Whether or not Donald Trump can just do anything, anytime, any place, whether it's assassinate other people, whether it's, call for an attack on the U.S. Capitol, whatever. We just want to know that. I mean, that is the backdrop of what we're talking about. A U.S. president that incited an attack on the United States Capitol. It's incited an attack on the legislative branch to block the certification of his opponent who beat him by 8 million votes. And these guys are up here talking about this like it's past assault. That's the line that they've moved us to, that this is normal conversation. And Sam Alito is an absolute trip. But, it's all for Donald Trump. It's all for the tiki god of Donald Trump. It's all to please Donald Trump. And it's the audience of one theory once again. Sam Alito wants to make sure, and Clarence Thomas wants to make sure, that Donald Trump can hear what they're saying and make sure that everybody knows in Trump world and MAGA world that we're standing up for Trump. So this is going to be an interesting decision, because I actually think they may go in Trump's favor.
I mean, you're sitting here and you're listening to a Trump lawyer, Nola, say, yeah, hey, he can actually have Navy SEAL Team 6 kill a political rival.
Right.
Sure. Not a problem.
Right.
I mean, this is insane. This is crazy.
Right.
You saying so much. I can't. Did you say my name? Okay. Anyhow.
Nola?
Yes, you did.
Yeah,
you know what? This is for many years, I TA'd and co-taught law policy, a law policy class at USC, as we're talking about young folks. And one of the things that students will constantly say over and over, how can any fair adjudication ever happen when the starting point is, oh, this is a liberal judge and oh, this is a conservative judge? So the starting point, let's start there with the problem of you can talk about this in terms of being a constitutionalist or a traditionalist, but at the end of the day, you're going to find something that fits your ideology that already exists. And there are particular judges on the Supreme Court that were handpicked by Donald Trump just for this reason. And it was not kept a secret. It was in plain view, in plain sight. Trying to pregame it for a situation just like this. So the conversation, while it is around this particular situation, is a lot larger than this. We need to completely rethink our Supreme Court system. It should not be along the lines of political ideology. I think that is a mistake. It is a mistake, and it will continue to drag us down into the same voids, the same black holes that we are in right now. Because basically, it's a situation of who can craft the best argument that fits an ideology, and that is not okay. And I'm not saying that I tend to have more empathy and sympathy for the liberal judges because I feel like they have to do a lot of, acrobatics to speak in a way that makes sense versus the ideology. But if we need, talk about correcting the entire system, it needs to happen on both sides. The way that our system currently exists, it is not working and it is not helpful. Now, in terms of where they will land with this, they're going to kick it back to the lower courts. Because they understand, beyond Donald Trump, even though I believe if he gets in, you're going to have to drag him out by his toes in that hairpiece that was flying around in the wind today, because he's not going to come out. And the next person who gets in, that will be a Democrat, then that same standard has to apply. And that will be the only thing that will keep them from going full Trump. And, I think that they will kick it back down to the lower court. But this is a huge problem in our country that needs to be fixed.
Greg, these justices, they literally, this is how deranged MAGA is. They want to allow this man to do whatever he wants, when he wants. And this is all a move to further delay the trial. It's sickening, but it is who they are. And the fact that Clarence Thomas is actually allowed to sit on the bench knowing exactly what his wife was involved in, that I keep telling people, you can sit here and talk about, I'm not going to vote. Let me be very clear to all of y'all people who are thinking that right now. Clarence Thomas is 75. Sam Alito is 74. If Donald Trump is elected in November, those two are going to immediately retire so Donald Trump can replace them on the bench. And Sonia Sotomayor is 69. He may actually, again, if he wins, he may actually replace 3. That means he would have picked 6 out of the 9 Supreme Court justices. But folks go ahead and decide they want to sit their ass at home. Greg, go ahead.
That's right, Roland. And that's what this is about. I agree with you, Prof. I agree with you, Nola. They're going to try to kick this back down, more than likely. And that will leave it in the hands of Judge Chuckton to try to parse when a public act or private act might fall outside the scope of presidential immunity. And you're absolutely right, Roland. This is really what this is about. This is about getting their master, as you say, their tiki guy, Lauren, past November. This is what this is about. And so, John Henry Clark used to say in some stories, there are no good guys. So when you bring up the specter of Korematsu, it's a tragic moment in U.S. history. When you say something like Clarence Thomas, who was a complete embarrassment to the bench, to his race, and to basically to anything associated with any common human decency. Clarence Thomas brought up the Bay of Pigs today and said there were no prosecutions after the Bay of Pigs. And the lawyer had to remind him, well, there's a doctrine called the public authority defense. So when you see a president who acts in a way that you might not agree with, he's protected from prosecution for overseas acts. And that was kind of like in the same vein, a similar vein as you heard the reply to the Korematsu case. But as a black person, I can sympathize with the idea of illegal actions or immoral actions. And you heard Sonia Sotomayor refer to a Latin phrase, malum esse. Malum in se in the law means it is evil in itself. It's a moral wrong, regardless of whether it's illegal or not, or whether it's legal by a legal standard. It is wrong in itself. Well, that's what we're facing here. If we get to that issue, but I agree, we're not going to get to that issue because their number one goal, the Christian soldier, Sam Alito, who is a hard right-wing ideologue, but also a political animal, Clarence Thomas, who is a black man, who knows how much time he's got. His hair turns snow white. We know that diabetes and heart disease is real in black communities. And with the stress he's under as a whole manservant of white supremacy for decades, God only knows how much time any of us have on the earth. But I wouldn't bet against Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, as you say, tendering their resignations at some point under a Trump presidency. And finally, I'll end with this. If they can get him past the election, then we all know what happens to this case. He will direct the Department of Justice to dismiss it. But that's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to string this clock out.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.